Hello and welcome to the Idaho Reports podcast. I'm Logan Finney. There are less than 30 days until the November 2024 election. Joining me to discuss what preparations for Election Day look like here in Idaho is Ada County Clerk Trent Tripple. Clerk Tripple, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
So, Ada County is the most populous county in the state. We're home to, I think, a full quarter, 25% of the state's population. What does the state of the Ada County Clerk's office look like right now as you guys are staring down the barrel of Election Day coming at you?
Yeah, right. We are intimately into the what we called controlled chaos almost right now with the election coming up. We have preparations ongoing for early voting, in-person early voting that's going to start up on Monday the 15th. We have been neck deep in absentee requests, preparing those ballots to go out. We've already received a large portion of absentees coming back. So as the election jargon goes, the election is live for us. We are processing live ballots with absentees out there. We've also confirmed our 160 polling locations. We've got those locked down. We're in the midst of training over 1,000 poll workers to man those poll stations. We've got full training sessions for the next 4 weeks. And a lot of them are new, which is great. We've received a lot of support from the community. A lot of people reaching out saying they want to help, which is awesome. We haven't had to recruit necessarily as hard as we've had to in the past. Some of that's probably due to the interest in this election and wanting to see how it works, which is great. We want the community involved. We have a registration deadline coming up this Friday. So for voters that want to pre-register on the 11th, they got to do that before then. That is their best bet for requesting an absentee ballot. They can still vote in person if they have not registered. We have same-day registration here in Idaho. So if they want to show up in person at one of our early voting sites or on Election Day, they can still vote. They'll just need to make sure they bring the appropriate paperwork to register to vote. But the 11th of this month is the cutoff for registration, which is really the last time someone could register to request an absentee ballot.
And when it comes to those absentee ballots, obviously the last couple of elections, use of absentee ballots had gone up because of the coronavirus pandemic and everything else that was going on. Now that we're a little further out from that, have those numbers normalized? Are absentee ballots more popular than they used to be? What's your sense of that?
Yeah, my sense is here locally in Ada County, what we've seen is traditionally prior to 2020, absentees were utilized primarily by unaffiliated and Democratic voters. The majority of people requesting absentee ballots now is Republicans. And so it's kind of flipped on its head in terms of who's requesting absentee ballots. The numbers aren't necessarily anything that's out of the ordinary. Obviously, we've had that big bump in 2020 and 2021 following the pandemic. But 50,000, we're right now at 53,000 requested absentee ballots for Ada County. I'm not saying that's abnormal for a presidential election. That would probably be pretty close to a normal election that we would see, with about 15 to 20% of our registered voters utilizing absentee as their form of voting. Another 15 to 20% are using in-person early voting at one of our early voting sites, and about 60 to 70% vote on election day in their precinct. So that looks like it's about the pattern that will hold true for this election as well.
Very interesting. You are one of just 44 different elected county clerks across the state, but you guys all work pretty closely, and you guys also work with the Secretary of State's office. Mr. McGrain held your seat before you took over the office. What sort of communication are you having with your fellow county clerks and with the Secretary of State's office as election day nears?
Yeah, given that the Secretary of State is a former clerk, he is very aware of the challenges that come up with administering the elections at the ground level with the clerks. A lot of good communication is taking place. We recently met here in the Capitol for a conference for the Idaho Association of Counties. So most of the clerks from across the state were there. That gave us the opportunity to kind of proactively let Idaho voters know that we're doing everything that's within our power to make sure that we pull off an election that is secure, that people have access to the ballot, and the results are going to be accurate. And those things that were in that letter that we signed are things that we've been doing for years. It's not anything new, but with the current narrative around elections integrity, we just want to reemphasize that we're doing things the right way here in Idaho. Idaho really is the envy of the rest of the country when it comes to how we process our elections and administer our elections, and the access and the security measures that we have in place that are very common sense. Everywhere else wishes they could do it like we do. And so we're communicating all the time between clerks. Obviously the difference between counties is pretty significant when you consider someone like Clark County compared to Ada County. How we do things is very different, right? But the principles remain the same. We're all dedicated to making sure people have access to the ballot. We're all dedicated to making sure that we are conducting the election in a secure manner, and that we are producing accurate results that reflect the will of the voters. We're all dedicated to that. We're all committed to that. And we just wanted to remind people of that fact when we came out with that stance this last couple of weeks.
Alrighty. When you're hearing from people in the community who have concerns about election integrity, what are kind of the most common things that you hear from folks? And if you feel like it, what sort of measures do you have in place to address those type of things?
Absentee security often comes up. The things that are unique about Idaho when it comes to absentees, we do not send absentee ballots out to anyone who has not requested them. That is the first common sense measure, right? The second one is we have extremely talented and accurate signature verifiers that will verify signatures as they come back. If it's lacking a signature, it gets cured, and we take measures to try to reach out to the voter to make sure that we have the right person. If the signature doesn't match, we do the same thing. And unfortunately, we've had instances in the past where we have verified a signature is not the same signature, and we have the sheriffs pay a visit to these individuals. It's a felony to try to mess with elections, and we take that very serious. We refer any kind of that kind of stuff to the sheriff's office and the prosecutor's office to make sure that people understand this is very serious business. The right to vote is something that everyone should take serious and not flaunt or try to skirt the regulations and rules around. So that's one, is the absentee ballots. The other is our access. In larger counties, we have to use machines if we're going to get results out in a timely fashion. There's no way that we can hand count. And so there's a lot of concerns in the past. A lot of those have kind of died off as we've done a concerted effort to educate the populace on this. But a lot of people want to know if our machines are connected to the internet. They're not. The machines that we use are not connected to the internet. They scan the paper ballot, which is the official record, and they help us tabulate. Those machines are tested. After the fact, they're audited. And we have not had any problems with those over the last several years before or after 2020. But that's a question that often comes up for folks. So our machines are tested, they're accurate, they're not connected to the internet, and they help us tabulate the vote in a way that, again, reflects the will of the voters.
More recently, Ada County has been doing something super interesting with those scans of all of your paper ballots. As you said, the paper ballot is the official record in Idaho. We can always go back and check those. But Ada County, you guys have a new tool that's called the Ballot Verifier, where I was poking around in it. You can go in and look at actual scans of all the actual ballots of recent elections. And as a reporter, obviously, I'm a big nerd. That's pretty cool. But talk to me about your motivation for putting this tool together and kind of give me the backstory on that.
So we were getting inundated with public records requests back after 2020. People wanted to know how the machines read the actual ballots by looking at what we call a cast vote record, which is the official report of how that machine counted that paper ballot, right? And it was very difficult for people to get access to that information because we ourselves didn't record it and store it in such a way that was easy to get access to. We've always had the paper ballot. That's the official ballot. In a recount or a contest, we would go back to the paper ballot. But in order to build trust in what we were doing, Saul, the elections director, Saul Seiler, not myself, we sat down and we said, hey, look, there's got to be a better way to get information to people so that they can build their trust in the system. And so we contacted a company called Severa. They are out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. They are in the election space. They're in the data distribution space. Their big thing is getting government records accessible to people so that they can verify what government is doing. And so we contacted them and said, hey, this is our idea. They thought we were crazy at first, but then they got on board and we're like, this sounds like a really cool thing to try to do. So it took us 18 months. It cost us about $40,000. But now everyone in the county, in the world, can come to and watch Ada County elections, and they can look at every single ballot that's cast side by side with the cast vote record that shows how the machine recorded that vote. They can sort and dice all the information down to the precinct level. They can look at it in terms of vote channels, whether that's absentee voting, in-person early voting, or election day voting, and they can reduce their searches down to what they want to, so they don't have to look at all 300,000 ballots, right? If they only are concerned with a specific race, if they're only concerned with a specific vote channel, like I want to look at the absentee votes cast in precinct 1004 in this race, it will sort and pare that down. So all you have to look at is the ballots associated with that particular search. With the other thing that's part of this system is that when we send this data over to Severa, because what we do is essentially we take all of our images from the ballots that we capture on election day and the cast vote record that's associated with them, we throw them across the fence, right? Because we don't connect with them. They don't connect to our system. It's this data going over to them. They then essentially do a third-party audit of our results. And if you see the blue checked verified under a race in Ballot Verifier, it means they have matched what the ballots say with what we reported on election night. So they are in essence auditing us. That's a third-party audit that you can see the results of as soon as you bring up Ballot Verifier. But if you still don't trust that, you could go yourself and download or view every single ballot associated with any contest in any election going back 7 elections and view it for yourself if you'd like. That allows citizens and anybody to verify the accuracy of our elections. And that's what we were shooting for. We wanted it to be simple. We wanted it to be easy. We wanted it to be free to citizens. So you're not having to pay $20 to request the public records request that you get 20 days later. And it's not in any kind of format that you can easily look at anyways. This does all that work for you and you can look at it yourself. So we hope it's a model going forward for other jurisdictions. We've had a lot of interest from other counties and other states across the country in this. Several have started adopting it already in Texas and in New England. Arizona, Nebraska, Kentucky are all showing a strong interest in this. There's really no excuse for it any longer to have that information and not make it accessible to voters. The other thing that's really important about this is that it protects voters' privacy. There is no way for someone to look at the ballot verifier and determine who cast that ballot. And we've even taken steps to ensure that. So, for instance, if there was ever a precinct in which there was only one person that voted, right, I would block that image from being seen, because you could essentially take that ballot and look at voter history and say, I know who that person was because they're the only one that cast the ballot in that election, and now I have the image of that ballot, and then tie the two together. So we've taken steps to even block that. So voter privacy is important. Constitutional right to a secret ballot is upheld in this, but we've essentially, as Adam Friedman from the Severa CEO has often said, we've turned a black box into a glass box. And so now everyone can see what they want to see.
Yeah, it's a super cool tool. I think it's great for transparency. I think the fact that other counties and even in other states are picking it up is very promising. And being able to see it at the ballot level is very, very interesting. In the past, we've gotten precinct level results, but you never know who which actual sets of candidates maybe were paired together by preference or uh, ticket splitting in the general election. I'm sure all sorts of academics would have a field day looking through all of those.
That's the fascinating thing about this. You hit it on the nail. When we put this out, we weren't anticipating a lot of the power that came along with this tool. You now, as you mentioned, can see at the ballot level voter behavior. And you can see, for instance, in the 2022 general election, there was 24% of the people that voted in that election that voted straight Republican ticket. There was 18% that voted straight Democrat ticket. So that means there was 57% of the voters that cast a ballot in that election that voted for both a Republican and a Democrat on the same ballot. That blows away the myth of these monolithic voters. If you're a registered Republican or a registered Democrat or an unaffiliated, you're definitely going to vote a certain way. Now you can actually see who people voted for in comparison to everyone else on the ballot. And it's fascinating to look at those and see. The other thing that you can see is, there's and sometimes it's substantiated, but now you can actually have the data and the facts on this. Down ballot undervotes, right? Someone goes in and they vote for the top of the ticket, but don't cast ballot or votes for the bottom of the ticket. In this last primary, that was blown out of the water, right? We had people coming in voting for precinct committeemen and county races and not voting for U.S. representative for the state of Idaho, right? And you can see where people's minds are at when you look at the actual voter behavior, which is fascinating. So like you said, I'm excited for some academics out there to get a hold of this and start doing some really in-depth analysis on voter behavior.
And it's not just for the academics, it's super accessible to the public, just right there on the website.
Yep.
I even during the most recent election, I attended one of the Secretary of State's office audits up in Valley County in Cascade, and there was a local gentleman there who attended and watched the audit. He was not interested in the legislative race that they were auditing. He wanted to watch over their shoulder and do his own personal audit of one of the county races. So
Yep.
this makes it something that anybody in the state or in the country could do for that matter.
One thing we're trying to do with the ballot verifier right now, it's about a 5-week turnaround time, which is outside the contest period. We think we can work towards getting that done within the contest period. So before someone was to request a recount, they could actually go in and look at the ballots and determine if there was enough there for them to want to challenge the results and ask for a recount. We think that would also be a game changer for candidates and campaigns to be able to have this information at their fingertips within the contest period after the election.
And you're having conversations with the other counties here in Idaho about possibly doing that in the future?
We've had conversations with the Secretary of State. There have been legislators that have approached us wanting to try to mandate this for the entire state. If that were the case, the clerks wouldn't have a choice to get on board. But there are other clerks that are wanting to do it. Now we're within a time frame right now of the election that it's not possible to turn this on for anybody for this election. But I do see it as the wave of the future, and why someone doesn't have this accessibility to the voter data on a statewide level. It's really a question that begs the answer, right? And I know what the answer is it should be available.
All right. Ada County Clerk Trent Tripple, I'll let you get back to work getting ready for a safe, secure election come November 5th.
Thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate you.
Celebrating 75 years of science and innovation, Idaho National Laboratory's 6,200 researchers and support staff are advancing the nation's nuclear research, renewable energy systems, and cybersecurity solutions. Presentation of Idaho Reports on Idaho Public Television is made possible through the generous support of the Laura Moore Cunningham Foundation, committed to fulfilling the Moore and Bettis family legacy of building the great state of Idaho, by the Friends of Idaho Public Television, and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.